Hey there, I'm your storyteller for tonight. I know you're here to drift off to sleep, but first, let's make a little deal. Like this video and subscribe so I can keep whispering nightmares into the dark. Now, tell me, where are you from? And what time is it where you are? I want to know who's brave enough to listen. At night, get comfortable, dim the lights, and whatever you do, don't open your eyes. Every night, no matter the weather, something walks down our street whistling softly. You can only hear it if you're in the living room or the kitchen when they walk by, and it always starts at exactly 3:03. The sound starts faint, somewhere near the beginning of the lane near the Carson place. We're towards the middle of the street, so the whistling moves past us before fading away in the direction of the cul-de-sac. When I was younger, my sister and I would sneak into the kitchen some nights to listen. Mom and Dad didn't like that, and we'd catch hell if they found us out there, but they were never too hard on us since we always stuck to the one big rule. Don't try to look at whatever was whistling. My neighborhood is a funny place. I've lived here since I was 6 and I love it. The houses are small but well kept, good-sized yards, plenty of places to roam. There are a lot of other kids here my age. I turned 13 back in October. We grew up together and would always play four square in the cul-de-sac or roam around from back porch to back porch in the summer. This was a good place to grow up. I'm old enough to see it. And there's only the two strange things here, the night whistling and the good luck. The whistling never bothered me much. Like I said, I couldn't even hear it from my bedroom. But Mom and Dad don't like talking about it, so I've stopped asking questions. My dad is a strong guy, tall and calm. He has an accent since he moved to the US as a kid. His family, my grandparents, they're from the islands. That's what they call it. My dad, the only time he isn't so calm is if the whistler comes up. He talks a little quicker then, eyes move faster, and he tells us not to think about it so much and to always remember the one rule, the big rule. Don't try to look outside when the whistler goes past. Not that we could look even if we wanted. See, there are shutters on the inside of every window, thick pieces of heavy canvas that pull down from the top and latch to the bottom of the window frame. Each latch even has a small lock, about the size of what you'd find on a diary. My dad locks those shutters every night before we all go to bed and keeps the key in his room. My mom, I don't know what she thinks about the whistling. I've seen her out in the living room before at 3:03 when the sound starts. I could see her if I cracked my door open just an inch to peek. She's not out there often, at least I haven't caught her much, but once or twice a month I think she sits out there on our big red couch just listening. The whistler has the same tune every night. It's cheerful. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Remember how I said there are two odd things about where I live? Well, besides our night whistler, everyone in my neighborhood is really lucky. It's hard to explain, and Dad doesn't like us talking about this part much either. But good things just seem to happen to people around here a lot. Usually it's small things, winning a radio contest or getting an unexpected promotion at work, or finding some arrowheads buried in the yard. You know, the authentic kind. The weather is pretty good, and there's no crime, and everybody's gardens bloom extra bright in the fall. A million little blessings, I've heard my mom say about living here. But the main reason we stay here, why we moved here in the first place, is my sister Nola. She was born very sick, something with her lungs. We couldn't even bring her home when she was born, only visit her in the hospital. She was so small, I remember, small even compared to the other babies. A machine had to breathe for her. We moved into our house here to be closer to the hospital. As soon as we moved here, Nola started getting better. The doctors couldn't figure it out. They chalked it up to whatever they were doing, but we all could tell they were confused. But my parents knew, even I knew, Nola getting better was just another of the million little blessings we got for living in our neighborhood. So that's why we stayed even after we found out that for every small miracle that happens here every day, now and then, some bad things happen, but they only happen if you look for the whistler. See, our neighborhood has a welcoming committee. They show up with macaroni casserole and a gift basket and a manila folder whenever someone new moves in. They're very friendly. 4 people showed up when we moved in 7 years ago. The committee made small talk, gave me a Snickers bar, and took turns holding Nola. It was her first week out of the hospital, so they were extra careful. Then the committee asked to speak to my parents in private, so I was sent to my room, where I still managed to hear nearly every word. The welcoming committee told my parents about how nice the neighborhood was, really exceptionally, hard to explain kind of nice. And then they told my parents about the even harder to explain whistling that happened every morning at 3:03 and ended at the tick of 3:05. The group, our new neighbors, warned my parents that the whistling was quiet, would never harm or hurt us as long as we didn't look for what was making the sound. This part they stressed, and I pushed my ear into the door, straining to hear them. People who went looking for the whistler had their luck change, sometimes tragically. A black cloud would hang over anyone that looked. Anything that could go wrong would. The manila envelope the committee brought over contained newspaper clippings, stories about car crashes and ruined lives, public deaths and freak accidents.
Not everyone dies, I heard the head of the committee tell my dad. But the life goes out of them. Even if they lived, there's no light in them ever again. No presence.
My mom, I could tell she wasn't taking it seriously. She kept asking if this was some prank they play on new neighbors. At one point, my mom got angry, accused the committee of trying to scare us out of our new home, asked them if they were racist on account of my dad being from the islands.
My dad calmed her down, told her he could tell our new neighbors were sincere and they were just trying to help us. He explained that he grew up hearing these kinds of stories from his mom and that he knew there were strange things that walked among us. Some of those strange things were good and some were bad, but most were just different.
After the committee left, Dad went out to the hardware store, bought the canvas blinds, the latches, and the locks, and installed them on every window in the house after dinner. That first night in our new house, I crept out of my room at 3 a.m., only to find my dad awake sitting on the living room couch, holding my baby sister. My dad held up his finger in a shh motion, but patted the couch next to him. I sat, and we waited.
At exactly 3:03, we heard the whistling. Da-da-da-da-da-dum. Da-da-da-da-da-dum. It came and it went, just like our neighbors said. The whistling returns each night, and we never look, and we enjoy our million little blessings every day. Nola breathes on her own, and she's grown into a strong, clever girl. My dad even joined the welcoming committee.
We don't get new neighbors often. Why would anyone want to leave? But when a new family moves in, my dad and the committee bring them macaroni casserole, a gift basket, and the manila folder. I can always tell by the look on my dad's face when he comes back if the family took the committee seriously or if we'd be getting new neighbors again very soon. Not long ago, a family moved in directly next to us. The previous owner, Ms. Maddie, passed away at age 105. She'd lived a good, long life. Our new neighbors seemed like they'd fit in just fine. They believed the welcoming committee, took my dad's advice about the locking shutters since they had a young child of their own. Whatever newspaper clippings were in that manila envelope, whatever evidence, my dad never let us see. But I imagine it must have been awfully convincing since our neighbors got along with no issues for the first month. One night when our new neighbors had to leave town, they sent their son, Holden, to stay with us. He was 12, a year under me in school. I didn't know him well before that night, but as soon as his parents dropped him off after dinner, I could tell it was going to be a bad time. "Do you know who is always out there whistling every night?" Holden asked the moment the adults left the room. The three of us were sitting in the den, some Disney movie playing idly on the television. My sister and I exchanged a glance. "We don't talk about that," I said. "I think it's that weirdo that lives in the big yellow house on the corner," Holden said. "Mr. Tolles?" my sister asked. "No way, he's really nice." Holden shrugged. "Must be a psycho killer then." Nola tensed. "We don't talk about it," I repeated. "Let's go in my room and play Nintendo." We spent the next few hours playing games, eating popcorn and then watching movies. A typical sleepover, but I could see Holden was getting antsy. After my parents had wished us a good night, locked the blinds and gone to bed, Holden stood up from his beanbag and walked over to where Nola and I were sitting on my bed. "Have you ever even tried looking?" he asked. "It's nearly time." Like most sleepovers, we'd conveniently ignored any suggestion of a bedtime. I was shocked to see he was right. It was almost 3 a.m. I sighed. See, I can't even try to look because my dad locks the blinds every night and hides the key, he continued, ignoring me. So does our dad, said Nola. No, replied Holden. No, he doesn't. You saw him do it, I said, a little sharper than I meant to sound. Holden grinned. Your dad locks the blinds, yeah, but he doesn't hide the key. He keeps it right on his normal key chain. So? I asked, worried I already knew what he would say next, because I had noticed that my dad didn't bother hiding the key anymore after all of these years, because he knew we took it seriously. So, after your dad locked up but before your parents went to bed, I went to the bathroom, and on my way, I may have peeked into their room, and I may have seen your dad's keychain on his nightstand, and I maybe went and borrowed the key to blinds. Nola and I stared, and his grin only grew wider. You're lying, I said. Holden shrugged. You can check if you want. Just open your parents' door and look. You'll see his keychain right there on the nightstand. Stay here, I told both of them. Don't move a muscle. I hurried over to my parents' room but hesitated at the door. If Holden wasn't lying, my dad would be angry. Beyond angry. I was scared thinking about it, but more scared of an open window with the Whistler right outside. I opened the door, barely an inch, and looked in, but it was too dark to see. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the room. 2 steps into the dark, I froze. The whistling started, and I could hear it clearly from my parents' room. I never realized, but they must have heard the sound every night since we moved into the house. They never told us. I don't think I could have slept through it. I stood there, listening to the whistling come closer, unsure whether I should turn on a light or call out for my dad. Soft sounds from the living room brought me back to reality. Nola! I yelled, running out of my parents' room. Holden and Nola were standing near the front door next to a window. Holden wasn't lying. I could see him fumbling with the lock on one of the blinds. I heard a click. He did have the key. Holden let out a quick laugh. Nola stood next to him, hunched up, afraid but maybe curious. The whistling was right outside our house now. I think I made a sound, called out. I can't remember. Time felt frozen, clock hands nailed to the face. But I found myself moving. I'm not fast. I've never been athletic. Somehow, though, I covered the space between myself and Nola in a moment. My eyes were locked on her, but I heard Holden pull the blind all the way down so it could release. I heard the snap of it start to raise, and I heard the whistling just on the other side of the window. But I had my arms around Nola, and I turned us so she was facing away from the window. At the same time, I jammed my eyes shut. The blind whipped open. The whistling stopped. I felt Nola shaking in my arms. Don't look, okay, I told her. Don't turn around. We were positioned so that she was facing back towards the hallway and I was facing the window. My eyes were still closed. I felt her nod into my shoulder. I reached out with the arm not holding Nola and tried to touch Holden. My hand brushed against his arm. He was shaking worse than Nola. Holden? I asked. Silence. I reached past him and gingerly felt for the window, eyes still sealed shut. The glass was cold against my fingertips, colder than it should have been for the time of year. I moved my hand up the window, searching for the string to the blind. The glass began to get warmer the further I reached, and there was a gentle hum feeding back into my fingertips. I tried not to think about what might be on the other side of the window. Finally, I touched the string and yanked the blinds shut. I opened my eyes. In the dim light leaking out from the kitchen, I could make out Holden, pale and small, staring at the now closed window. Holden? I asked again. He turned towards me and he screamed. Everything became a flurry of motion. Lights sparked to life in the hall, then the living room. My parents' footsteps thudded across the hardwood floor. I didn't turn to look back at them. My eyes were glued to Holden. He was pale, had bit his lip so hard there was a thin red line of blood running down his chin, and he'd wet himself. What happened? My dad asked from behind me. I managed to swivel away from Holden and look back. He looked. I'd never seen my dad scared before, but I saw it that night. In that moment, an old, ugly terror stitched on his face. A parent's fear. Just Holden? He mouthed to me. I nodded yes. My dad let out a breath. He looked so relieved I nearly expected him to cheer. But then he turned to Holden and my dad's face changed. I wondered if he felt bad for feeling good that Holden was the only one that looked. There was a knock at the door. We all froze. Holden whimpered. "Don't answer it," my mom said. She stood at the threshold of the hall. I'd always thought she was a skeptic and just humored my dad about the windows and the whistler, but that night we were all believers. I noticed that both of my parents held baseball bats they must have taken from their bedroom. The knock came again, a little louder this time. "Please don't open the door," Holden whispered. My dad walked over to him, hugged him close. "We won't," my dad promised, still holding his bat. "Nothing is coming in here tonight." Thud, thud, thud. This time the knocking was loud enough to rattle the door. Holden screamed again, and Nola clutched her arms around my neck. My mom came over and knelt down next to us, wrapping my sister and me close. Thud, thud, thud. "Call the police," my mom whispered to my dad. The knocking instantly stopped. My dad looked over his shoulder at us. "Do you think—" He was cut off by frantic knocking that trailed off to a polite tap, tap, tap. "Police," something said from the other side of the door. The voice from outside sounded exactly like my mom, like a parrot repeating the words back to her. "Police. Call. The police. Tap, 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 police." My mom pulled us closer. "Police. Police. 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 Please stop," I heard her whisper. "I don't think calling them will help," my dad said. "How will we know when they're the ones at the door?" The knocking came back harder than before. The door shook, then it stopped. After a long moment, I heard the knocking again, but it was coming from our back door. We all turned together towards the back door, but the knocking immediately returned to the front door. Front to back to front, loud, then quiet, then loud again. Suddenly, the sound was coming from both doors at once. Big, heavy blows like a sledgehammer. Then something started rapping against all of the windows in the house, then the walls. It was like we were living inside a drum with a dozen people trying to play at once. Or we were a turtle, and something was attempting to claw us out of our shell. "Stop!" Holden yelled. The knocking died. "I won't tell," Holden said, staring at the door. "I promise I won't tell anyone what I saw. Just please go away." We waited for nearly a minute. Then we heard it, a soft tap, tap, tap coming from the window Holden had looked through earlier. Holden started to cry, sobbing like a prisoner watching gallows being built outside their cell. My dad held him, brushed his hair but never lied to him, never told him things would be okay. The tapping at the window went on for the rest of the night. We huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. Eventually my mom tried to take us kids into my room while my dad stayed to watch the door. But the second we moved into my bedroom, the knocking came back, so loud it was possible to ignore. I was afraid the door couldn't take it. We went back to the living room and the knocking stopped. Only the tap, tap, tap on the window remained. None of us slept that night. The tapping stopped around 7 a.m. That's about the time the sun comes up here. We waited another 2 hours before my dad opened the blinds from one window. He made us all go back to my parents' bedroom first. I heard him open the door, then come back in. "Okay," he told us, "it's done." Holden's parents came back around lunchtime. My mom and dad walked Holden over to his house, and they all went inside for quite a while. Nola and I watched from the window. She stuck to me the whole day, right at my side, sometimes holding my hand. When my parents came back, they looked grim, but wouldn't tell us what they said to Holden's family. It was a Sunday, so we all spent the day together, ordered pizza, and watched movies. That night, everyone slept in my room. Nola and my mom in the bed with me, my dad in a chair he'd pulled over. There was no knocking that night, or any night since. We didn't see much of Holden or his parents for the rest of that week, but by Thursday, there was a moving truck in their driveway. Nola and I watched them packing up the whole afternoon after school. What sticks with me most is how tired Holden and his parents looked. All three had the same pallor, grim mouths, and lightless eyes. Even from across the street, I could tell something was very wrong. Holden and his family were gone before sunset. I remember what the original welcoming committee said to my parents when we moved in. Not everyone who looks at the Whistler dies, but even those that live have the light go out of them, and the rest of their lives are full of misfortune, a million little tragedies. I think Holden's parents must have looked, either to comfort him if they didn't believe or share the burden if they did. I watch Nola some days, happy and young and alive, and I wonder if I'd been slower. If she'd looked out the window that night, would I have looked too? To comfort her? To share that burden? I'm glad I don't have to find out. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. We still hear our Whistler walking past every night. The blessings, the luck, the good things here are too good to leave. But we're careful. We don't have friends over to spend the night anymore. And my dad hides the key to the blinds very, very well. Not that I've gone looking. Some things you just don't need to look for. I'm a doctor, a general practitioner. I'm trained to look people in the eye and tell them what's real. But for the past 3 nights, when I catch myself in the mirror, the eyes looking back aren't mine. They're watching, but not blinking, and not mine. Last night, when I finally blinked, I felt something inside me. Stay open. This isn't a joke or a metaphor for burnout. I'm writing it at 2:17 a.m., bathroom light flickering, every mirror covered with towels and tape. If it ends suddenly, it means they've figured out I'm trying to be seen. His name was Marcus. He was a psychologist before he became my patient. The first appointment seemed unremarkable. Headaches, fatigue, disturbed sleep. But what stood out was the way he spoke, precise, clinical. As if trying to sound casual while measuring my every word, he said, "It started after my client died." That caught my attention. Marcus had lost a patient to suicide, someone he'd misdiagnosed as having a narcissistic crisis rather than major depression. The client took their life 2 weeks later. His notes were reportedly cold, detached. He didn't see it coming. I didn't see it, he told me, and now I can't stop seeing things I shouldn't. I asked what he meant. He lifted his glasses and said, "Look." His eyes looked normal. A little dry, maybe. No infection, no trauma. I noted psychosomatic in the chart and offered a referral to ophthalmology, just in case. He didn't follow up. Instead, he came back a week later with a notebook full of drawings. Eyes in clusters. Eyes without lashes. Eyes embedded in skin. One sketch showed a face staring into a mirror, but the reflection was a blank skull with 2 wide, hovering pupils floating in black sockets. "They're watching through me," he said. "I see things others don't." But now they're starting to see back. I asked if he'd had any hallucinations. He nodded, but only when I tried to look away. I gently explained it might be trauma manifesting as visual disturbances, perhaps a complex grief response. I used the phrase visual echo phenomena, which I half remembered from a psych seminar. He didn't argue. He just said, "You're the second one who couldn't see me." That was the last time I saw him alive. Until last month, an envelope arrived at the clinic, no return address. Inside, a letter, a photo, and a laminated form from a hospice facility. The photo made my chest go cold. Marcus, pale and hollowed, with both eyes surgically removed, gauze packed into his sockets. Yet his expression was disturbingly peaceful, not relaxed, not gone, just still, like whatever had been staring through him had finally left. The letter wasn't angry. It wasn't even emotional. It read like an aftercare note. "They've stopped screaming," he wrote, "but they haven't stopped looking. They'll need somewhere else to live soon. If they come to you, be honest. Mirrors make them angry. You didn't look when you had the chance. So now, they'll look through you." At the bottom of the page was his date of death, 3 days before the letter arrived. And one final line, barely legible: "What you refuse to see will become your only vision." That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I noticed something in the bathroom mirror, a twitch, not mine. My eye muscle moved in a way I'd never felt, like a blink I didn't initiate. I leaned closer. The pupil didn't contract. I brushed it off. Exhaustion. Hallucination. A trick of light. I'm a rational man. I wanted to believe it, but the next few days proved otherwise. Photos on my phone, slightly altered eye shapes. Security footage, me walking through the clinic without blinking. Patients commenting, "You're staring a bit hard, doc." Are you wearing different lenses? Then came the dreams. In them, I watch people sleep. For hours. I can't look away. My face feels stiff, fixed, like my skin is just the outer casing for something else that's watching. But the worst moment came when I stepped out of the bathroom last night. The hallway was dim. Just enough light from behind to cast a clear shadow across the far wall. I saw myself. Or rather, I saw the outline that should have been me. Arms at my sides. Chin slightly raised. But it was still. Too still. I moved. It didn't. Then, slowly, deliberately, it turned its head just a few degrees, as if noticing me watching it. And it blinked. Not a glitch of light. Not some eyelid illusion. I saw lashes sweep down, one clean, unhurried blink, like a lens testing its calibration. I backed away, but my body felt out of sync, like I was following someone else's lead. That was the moment I covered every reflective surface in my flat, even metal fixtures. The light distorts now, and in it, I sometimes see things twitch before I do. I finally pulled Marcus's file out again. That's when I found the page I'd never read, a clinical self-assessment Marcus had written in secret. About his client. Patient displays hyperfixation on physical self-worth. Eyes are central focus of delusion. Appears to seek validation through being seen, then punished by it. Echoes of my own early fear of being perceived. He had been diagnosing himself through someone else. And I think he knew what was happening, that the eyes weren't metaphor, that they migrate, that when someone refuses to witness what's inside you, that something else will. And it doesn't go away. I haven't cried in days, but my eyes are never dry. They don't close properly anymore. They sting when I try, because I think they're not mine now. I think they're his, or worse, theirs. Tonight, I tried to FaceTime a colleague, just to feel normal, but he froze mid-sentence and said, "Is that a filter? Your camera's not showing. You." I ended the call. Fast. There's a static hum in the back of my head now, like an old slide projector stuck between frames. I don't sleep, I don't blink, but I see everything. Every lie, every fracture, every time someone avoids the truth. I think that's what they feed on, avoidance. Marcus wasn't mad, he was open. He gave them an exit. I didn't. I refused to see him, and now I only see him. If this post cuts out suddenly, don't worry about me. Worry about your own reflection, because the moment you stop recognizing yourself, that's when they start watching through you. And if you ever see a blink that isn't yours, just remember, what you refuse to see will become your only vision. I've worked for the City of London Waste and Sanitation Division for almost a decade. It's not glamorous, but it pays decently, and I don't mind physical work. The job keeps you grounded. You learn a lot about people by what they throw away, but there are some things you're not meant to find. And last week, I found one of them. Every few months, we do what's called a deep site audit. Basically, we clean out and inventory the private hire storage units managed by the council. These are old brick sheds hidden behind housing estates, originally coal storage from the post-war years. Now people rent them to stash junk, old bikes, broken garden furniture, busted kettles. Half the time, no one even remembers what's inside. This site was in Deptford, behind a row of 1950s tower blocks. I'd never been there before. The area's being gentrified, but these blocks were untouched. Gray concrete, windows covered in tin foil, the smell of burnt grease in the stairwells. We had a list of 10 units to check. 9 were boring. Then we got to Unit 14. I still have the photo I took. The rust on the padlock had bled into the latch like a wound, and there was something about the air around it, like it hadn't been opened in a very, very long time. My coworker Sanj said, "Looks like a squat." I laughed. "More like a tomb." We pried the lock open, and immediately something smelled wrong. Not rotting exactly, more like metal and old paper, like someone had buried books in a wet basement for years. The unit was 6 feet deep and 4 feet wide. No light. We shone our torches inside. It wasn't full of rubbish. In fact, it was unnervingly clean. There was a metal chair bolted to the floor, a small desk with a notebook, a digital recorder, and a tall gray locker, like the kind you'd see in an old police station. On the wall was a city map, South London, pins stuck into random streets, no pattern I could make out. I said, "Looks like someone was living in here." Sanj said nothing. He was staring at the locker. It had 3 deadbolts, all engaged. One had a tag attached. "Do not open, no matter what it says." I laughed nervously. "You think it's some kind of prank?" Sanj shook his head. I stepped closer. The locker was vibrating slightly, a low, almost inaudible hum, like a washing machine mid-cycle, except it wasn't running on power. We stood there a full minute, listening. Then something inside knocked, 3 times. Slow, deliberate. Sanj backed up immediately. "We need to call this in." "I'm not calling anyone," I said. "It's probably a rat, or air pressure, or something stupid." He looked at me like I was mad, and I was, a little. I unbolted the locker. The metal was warm. Not just warm, hot like it had been sitting in the sun, except it hadn't. I opened the door. Empty. At first, just a shelf with a folded jacket, an old dictaphone, and a plastic folder labeled Number 17, Holloway. Then something moved. At the back of the locker, hidden in the shadow, there was a mirror, but it didn't reflect me. It showed a different room. Dingy, yellow lit, a single mattress on the floor, a pile of notebooks. On the wall, something written in black marker, "Do not acknowledge it." Then the light in the locker flickered, and the mirror went dark. Sanj was already halfway out of the shed. He told me later he'd felt something in his head, like static crawling under his skull. I closed the locker, tried to convince myself we'd seen an old prank, a trick mirror, something explainable. But here's where it gets worse. I took the plastic folder. I don't know why. Curiosity, stupidity, both. Inside were printed police reports, all unofficial, all unlogged, each one stamped internal only. Most were missing persons cases, all unsolved, all from the last 25 years. Some names I recognized from the news. One stood out. Case 98/2117. Eleanor, 17. Last seen near Holloway. Reported hearing voices behind the walls. Psychiatric history unclear. Vanished from inside locked flat. No forced entry. No witnesses. Inside the file was a drawing, done in pencil, childlike. It showed a tall, thin figure with no face, standing inside what looked like a metal locker, same one I'd opened. On the back of the drawing, someone had written, "It never speaks first. Don't answer it. Don't acknowledge. Don't open the door again." The next day, I tried to report what we found. Management told me Unit 14 had been condemned years ago after flooding. No one was renting it. No access had been given. The entry log showed it hadn't been opened since 2007. They told me to bin anything inside and move on. Sanj quit 2 days later, said he couldn't stop hearing knocking. I tried to laugh it off, tried to forget. Then, last night, I got home and found a single item in my hallway. A dictaphone, not mine. I pressed play. There was only one sound. Knocking. 3 times. Slow, deliberate. Then a voice. My voice. You open the door. You let it see you. Now it's waiting. I haven't slept since. And this morning, I heard a knock at my front door. But when I looked through the peephole, there was no one there. Just a mirror. and it didn't show my hallway. It showed that room again, that mattress, that writing. Do not acknowledge it. This happened a few years back. I was doing long haul, mostly cross-country routes, the kind that take you through vast stretches of nothing. You know the ones where the radio turns to static for hours, and the only sign of life is the occasional pair of headlights going the other way, miles apart. I was young, eager for the miles, the money, didn't mind the solitude, or so I thought. The route I was on took me across a long, desolate stretch of highway that ran between the borders of two large governmental territories. I don't want to say exactly where, but think big, empty spaces, lots of trees, not much else. It was notorious among drivers for being a dead zone, no signal, no towns for 100 miles either side, and prone to weird weather. Most guys tried to hit it during daylight, but schedules are schedules. Mine had me crossing it deep in the night. I remember the feeling. Utter blackness outside the sweep of my headlights. The kind of dark that feels like it's pressing in on the cab. The only sounds were the drone of the diesel engine, the hiss of the air brakes now and then, and the rhythmic thrum of the tires on asphalt. Hypnotic. Too hypnotic. I'd been driving for about 10 hours, with a short break a few states back. Coffee was wearing off. The dashboard lights were a dull green glow, comforting in a way, but also making the darkness outside seem even more absolute. My eyelids felt like they had lead weights attached. You fight it, you know? Slap your face, roll down the window for a blast of cold air, crank up whatever music you can find that hasn't dissolved into static. I was doing all of that. It must have been around 2 or 3 a.m. I was in that weird state where you're not quite asleep, but not fully awake either. Like your brain is running on low power mode. The white lines on the road were starting to blur together, stretching and warping, standard fatigue stuff. I remember blinking hard, trying to refocus. That's when I saw it, or thought I saw it. Just a flicker at the edge of my headlights, on the right shoulder of the road. Small, low to the ground. For a split second, I registered a shape, vaguely human-like, and then it was gone, swallowed by the darkness as I passed. My first thought, deer, or a coyote, common enough. But it hadn't moved like an animal. It had been upright. My brain, sluggish as it was, tried to process it. Too small for an adult, too still for an animal startled by a rig. Then, the logical part, the part that was still trying to keep me safe on the road, chimed in. You're tired, seeing things. Happens. And I almost accepted that. I really did. Shook my head, took a swig of lukewarm water from the bottle beside me, kept my eyes glued to the road ahead. The image, though, it kind of stuck. A small, upright shape, like a child. No way, I told myself. Out here, middle of nowhere, middle of the night? Impossible. Kids don't just wander around on interterritorial highways at 3 a.m. It had to be a trick of the light, a bush, my eyes playing games. I've seen weirder things born of exhaustion. Shadows that dance, trees that look like figures. It's part of the job when you're pushing limits. I drove on for maybe another 30 seconds, the image fading, my rational mind starting to win. Just a figment. Then I glanced at my passenger side mirror. Habit, always checking, and my blood went cold. Not just cold, it felt like it turned to slush. There, illuminated faintly by the red glow of my trailer lights receding into the distance, was the reflection of a small figure, standing on the shoulder of the road, exactly where I'd thought I'd seen something. It wasn't a bush, it wasn't a shadow, it was small, and it was definitely standing there, unmoving, as my truck pulled further and further away. My heart started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't fatigue, this was real. There was someone, something, back there. And it looked tiny. Every instinct screamed at me, danger. Wrong. Keep going. But another voice, the one that makes us human, I suppose, whispered something else. A kid? Alone out here? What if they're hurt? Lost? I fought with myself for a few seconds that stretched into an eternity. The image in the mirror was getting smaller, fainter. If I didn't act now, they'd be lost to the darkness again. God, the thought of leaving a child out there, if that's what it was. Against my better judgment, against that primal urge to just floor it, I made a decision. I slowed the rig, the air brakes hissing like angry snakes, pulled over to the shoulder, the truck groaning in protest, put on my hazards, their rhythmic flashing cutting into the oppressive blackness. Then I did what you're never supposed to do with a full trailer on a narrow shoulder. I started to reverse. Slowly, carefully, my eyes flicking between the mirrors, trying to keep the trailer straight, trying to relocate that tiny figure. The crunch of gravel under the tires sounded unnaturally loud. It took a minute, maybe two, but it felt like an hour. The red glow of my taillights eventually washed over the spot again, and there it was, a kid. I stopped the truck so my cab was roughly alongside them, maybe 10 feet away. Switched on the high beams, hoping to get a better look, and also to make myself clearly visible as just a truck, not something else. The kid was small, really small. I'd guess maybe 6, 7 years old. Hard to tell in the glare. They were just standing there, on the very edge of the gravel shoulder, right where the trees began. The woods pressed in close on this stretch of road. Tall, dark pines and dense undergrowth that looked like a solid black wall just beyond the reach of my lights. The kid wasn't looking at me. They were facing sort of parallel to the road, just walking, slowly, like they were on a stroll, completely oblivious to the massive 18-wheeler that had just pulled up beside them, engine rumbling, lights blazing. They were wearing what looked like pajamas. Thin, light-colored pajamas, in the chill of the night. No coat, no shoes that I could see. My mind reeled. This was wrong. So many levels of wrong. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was almost deafening, amplifying the crickets, the rustle of leaves in the woods from a breeze I couldn't feel in the cab. My heart was still thumping, a weird mix of fear and adrenaline and a dawning sense of responsibility. I rolled down the window. The night air hit me, cold and damp, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. "Hey!" I called out. My voice sounded hoarse, too loud in the quiet. "Hey, kid!" No response. They just kept walking, one small bare foot in front of the other, at a pace that was taking them absolutely nowhere fast. Their head was down, slightly. I couldn't see their face properly. "Kid, are you okay?" I tried again, louder this time. Slowly, so slowly, the kid stopped. They didn't turn their head fully, just sort of angled it a fraction, enough that I could see a pale sliver of cheek in the spill of my headlights. Still not looking at me, still ignoring the multi-ton machine idling beside them. A prickle of unease ran down my spine, not the normal kind of unease. This was deeper, colder. Animals act weird sometimes, but kids? A lost kid should be scared, relieved, something. This one was nothing. "What are you doing out here all alone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, friendly, like you're supposed to with a scared kid. Even though this one didn't seem scared at all. It's the middle of the night. Silence. Just the sound of their bare feet scuffing softly on the gravel as they took another step, then another, as if my presence was a minor inconvenience, a background noise they were choosing to ignore. This wasn't right. My internal alarm bells were clanging louder now. My hand hovered near the gear stick. Part of me wanted to slam it into drive and get the hell out of there. But the image of this tiny child, alone, possibly in shock, I couldn't just leave. Could I? "Where are your parents?" I pushed, my voice a bit sharper than I intended. "Are you lost?" Finally, the kids stopped walking completely. They turned their head, just a little more, still not looking directly at my cab, more towards the front of my truck, into the glare of the headlights. I could see their face a bit better now, pale, featureless in the harsh light like a porcelain doll, small, dark smudges that might have been eyes. No expression. None. Not fear, not sadness, not relief. Just blank. An unreadable slate. Then a voice. Small. Thin, like the rustle of dry leaves. Lost. Just that one word. It hung in the air between us. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a fresh wave of concern. Okay, lost. That's something I can deal with. Okay, kid. Lost is okay. We can fix lost. Where do you live? Where were you going? The kid finally, slowly, turned their head fully towards my cab, towards me. I still couldn't make out much detail in their face. The angle, the light, something was obscuring it, keeping it in a sort of shadowy vagueness despite the headlights. But I could feel their gaze. It wasn't like a normal kid's look. There was a weight to it, an intensity that was deeply unsettling for such a small form. Home, the kid said, that same thin, reedy voice. Trying to get home. Right, home. Where is home? I asked, leaning forward a bit, trying to project reassurance. Is it near here? Did you wander off from a campsite? A car? There were no campsites for miles, no broken down cars on the shoulder. I knew that. The kid didn't answer that question directly. Instead, they took a small step towards the truck. Then another. My hand tensed on the door handle, ready to open it to offer... What? A ride? Shelter? I didn't know. It's cold out here, I said, stating the obvious. You should get in. We can get you warm, and I can call for help when we get to a spot with a signal. My CB was useless, just static. My phone had shown no service for the last hour. The kid stopped about 5 feet from my passenger door, still in that pale, thin pajama-like outfit, barefoot on the sharp gravel. They should be shivering, crying. They were doing neither. Can you help me? The kid asked. The voice was still small, but there was a different inflection to it now. Less flat, a hint of something else. Pleading, maybe? Yeah, of course I can help you, I said. That's why I stopped. Where are your parents? How did you get here? The kid tilted their head, a jerky, unnatural little movement. They're waiting, at home. Okay, and where's home? Which direction? I gestured vaguely up and down the empty highway. The kid didn't point down the road. They made a small, subtle gesture with their head, a little nod towards the trees, towards the impenetrable darkness of the woods lining the highway. In there, the kid said. My stomach clenched. In the woods. Your home is in the woods. Lost, the kid repeated, as if that explained everything. Trying to find the path. It's dark. Yeah, it's very dark, I agreed, my eyes scanning the tree line. It looked like a solid wall of black. No sign of any path, any habitation. Just dense, old-growth forest. The kind of place you could get lost in for days, even in daylight. Can you come out? The kid asked. Help me look. It's not far, I can't see it from here. Every rational thought in my head screamed, no, get out of the truck. In the middle of nowhere, in the pitch dark, with this strange child who wanted me to go into those woods. Number absolutely not, but the kid looked so small, so vulnerable. If there was even a tiny chance they were telling the truth, that their house was just a little way in, and they were genuinely lost. I don't think that's a good idea, buddy, I said, trying to sound gentle. It's dangerous in there at night. For both of us. Best thing is for you to hop in here with me. We'll drive until we get a signal, and then we'll call the police or the rangers. They can help find your home properly. The kid just stood there, that blank, unreadable face fixed on me. But it's right there, they insisted, their voice a little more insistent now. Just a little way. I can almost see it. If you just step out. The light from your door would help. My skin was crawling. There was something profoundly wrong with this scenario. The way they were trying to coax me out. The lack of normal emotional response. The pajamas. The bare feet. The woods. I looked closer at the kid, trying to pierce that strange vagueness around their features. My headlights were bright, but it was like they absorbed the light rather than reflected it. Their eyes. I still couldn't really see their eyes. Just dark hollows. "I really think you should get in the truck," I said, my voice firmer now. "It's warmer in here. We can figure it out together." The kid took another step closer. They were almost at my running board now. "Please," they said, that reedy voice again. "My leg hurts. I can't walk much further. If you could just help me a little, just to the path." My internal conflict was raging. My trucker instincts, honed by years of seeing weird stuff and hearing weirder stories at truck stops, were blaring warnings. But the human part, the part that saw a child in distress, was still there, still arguing. I was tired. So damn tired. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. Maybe this was all some bizarre misunderstanding. I squinted, trying to see past the kid, towards the tree line they'd indicated. Was there a faint trail I was missing? A flicker of light deep in the woods? Nothing. Just blackness. Solid, unyielding blackness. And then I saw it. It wasn't something I saw clearly at first. It was more like an anomaly, a disturbance in the darkness behind the kid. The kid was standing with their back mostly to the woods, facing my truck. Behind them, the darkness of the forest was absolute, or it should have been, but there was something connected to them, something that stretched from the small of their back, from under the thin pajama top, and disappeared into the deeper shadows of the trees. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a weird shadow cast by my headlights, hitting them at an odd angle. Maybe a rope they were dragging? A piece of clothing snagged on a branch? I leaned forward, trying to get a clearer view. The kid was still talking, their voice a low, persistent murmur. "It's not far. Please, just help me. I'm so cold." But I wasn't really listening to the words anymore. I was focused on that thing behind them. It wasn't a rope. It wasn't a shadow. It was a tube, a long, dark, thick tube. It seemed to emerge directly from the kid's lower back, impossibly, seamlessly. It was dark matte, like a strip of the night itself given form, and it snaked away from the child, maybe 10, 15 feet, before disappearing into the inky blackness between two thick pine trunks. It wasn't rigid. It seemed to have a slight, almost imperceptible flexibility, like a massive, sluggish umbilical cord made of shadow. It didn't reflect any light from my headlamps. It just absorbed it. My breath hitched in my throat. My blood, which had been cold before, now felt like it had frozen solid. This wasn't just wrong. This was impossible, unnatural. The kid was still trying to coax me. "Are you going to help me? It's just there. You're so close." My voice, when I finally found it, was barely a whisper. I couldn't take my eyes off that appendage. "Kid, what is that?" "Behind you." The kid flinched. Not a big movement, just a tiny, almost imperceptible tightening of their small frame. Their head, which had been tilted pleadingly, straightened. The blankness on their face seemed to solidify. "What's what?" they asked, their voice suddenly devoid of that pleading tone. It was flat again, colder. That thing," I stammered, pointing with a shaking finger. "Coming out of your back, going into the woods. What is that?" The kid didn't turn to look. They didn't need to. Their gaze, those dark, unseen eyes, bored into me. "It's nothing," they said. The voice was still small, but it had a new edge to it, a hardness. "You're seeing things. You're tired." They were using my own earlier rationalization against me. "No," I said, my voice gaining a tremor of conviction born of sheer terror. "No, I'm not. I see it. It's right there. It's connected to you." The kid was silent for a long moment. The only sound was the thumping of my own heart, so loud I was sure they could hear it. The crickets had stopped. The wind seemed to die down. An unnatural stillness fell over the scene. Then the kid's face began to change. It wasn't a dramatic movie monster transformation. It was far more subtle and far more terrifying. The blankness didn't leave, but it sharpened. The pale skin seemed to tighten over the bones. The areas where the eyes were, those dark smudges seemed to deepen, to become more shadowed, more intense, and a flicker of something ancient and utterly alien passed across their features. It wasn't human anger. It was something older, colder, and infinitely more patient, now strained to its limit. The air in my cab suddenly felt thick, heavy, hard to breathe. "Just come out of the truck," the kid said, and the voice. Oh God, the voice. It wasn't the small, reedy voice of a child anymore. It was deeper, resonant, with a strange, grating undertone like stones grinding together. It was coming from that small frame, but it was impossibly large, impossibly old. It vibrated in my chest. "Come out, now!" The command was absolute. My hand, which had been hovering near the gear stick, now gripped it like a lifeline. My other hand fumbled for the ignition key, which I'd stupidly left in. "What are you?" I choked out, staring at the monstrous thing playing dress-up in a child's form, at the dark, pulsating tube that was its anchor to the shadows. The kid's head tilted again, that jerky, unnatural movement. The expression on its face, if you could call it that, was one of pure, unadulterated annoyance. Contempt, like I was a particularly stupid insect it had failed to swat. And then it spoke in that same terrible, resonant, grinding voice. The words it said are burned into my memory, colder than any winter night. "Why?" it rasped, the sound seeming to scrape the inside of my skull. "The fuck are humans smarter now?" That was it, that one sentence. The sheer cosmic frustration in it. The implication of past encounters, of easier prey, the utter alien nature of it. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I reacted. Primal fear, the kind that bypasses all higher brain function, took over. My hand twisted the key. The diesel engine roared back to life, a sudden, violent explosion of sound in the horrifying stillness. The kid, the thing, actually recoiled, a small, jerky step back. The expression, that awful, tightened, ancient look, intensified. I slammed the gear stick into drive. My foot stomped on the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning on the gravel for a terrifying second before they bit into the asphalt. I didn't look at it. I couldn't. I stared straight ahead, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, the whole cab vibrating around me. The truck surged forward, gaining speed with agonizing slowness. For a horrible moment, I imagined that tube thing whipping out, trying to snag the trailer, to pull me back, to drag me into those woods. I imagined that small figure with its ancient, terrible voice, somehow keeping pace. I risked a glance in my driver's side mirror. It was standing there, on the shoulder, unmoving. The headlights of my departing truck cast its small silhouette into sharp relief, and behind it, the dark tube was still visible, a thick, obscene cord snaking back into the endless night of the forest. It didn't seem to be retracting or moving. It just was. The thing didn't pursue. It just stood and watched me go. And that, somehow, was almost worse. The sheer confidence, the patience, like it knew there would be others. Or maybe it was just annoyed that this particular attempt had failed. I drove. I don't know for how long. I just drove. My foot was welded to the floor. The engine screamed. I watched the speedometer needle climb, far past any legal or safe limit for a rig that size, on a road that dark. I didn't care. The image of that thing, that child shape with its dark umbilical to the woods, and that voice, that awful grinding voice asking its horrifying question, was burned onto the inside of my eyelids. I must have driven for an hour, maybe more, at speeds that should have gotten me killed or arrested, before the adrenaline started to fade, replaced by a bone-deep shaking exhaustion that was more profound than any fatigue I'd ever known. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely keep the wheel straight. Tears were streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from sheer, unadulterated terror and relief. When the first hint of dawn started to gray the eastern sky, and my phone finally beeped, indicating a single bar of service, I pulled over at the first wide spot I could find. I practically fell out of the cab, vomiting onto the gravel until there was nothing left but dry heaves. I sat there on the cold ground, shaking for a long time, watching the sun come up, trying to convince myself that it had been a dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But I knew it wasn't. The detail of that tube, the voice, the question. You don't hallucinate something that specific, that coherent, that utterly alien. I never reported it. Who would I report it to? What would I say? Officer, I saw a little kid who was actually an ancient cosmic horror tethered to the woods by a nightmare umbilical cord, and it got mad because I didn't want to be its dinner. They'd have locked me up, breathalyzed me, drug tested me, sent me for a psych eval. I finished that run on autopilot, dropped the load, drove my rig back to the yard, and I quit. I told them I was burned out, needed a break. They tried to convince me to stay, offered me different routes, more pay. I just couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that kid, that tube, those woods. Every dark road felt like a trap. I found a local job, something that keeps me home at night. I don't drive in remote areas anymore if I can help it, especially not at night. I still have nightmares. Sometimes, when I'm very tired, driving home late from somewhere, I'll see a flicker at the edge of my vision on the side of the road, and my heart will try to beat its way out of my chest. I don't know what that thing was. An alien? A demon? Something else? Something that doesn't fit into our neat little categories? All I know is that it's out there, and it's patient. And it seems to have learned that its old tricks aren't as effective as they used to be. Why the fuck are humans smarter now? That question haunts me. It implies they weren't always. It implies that once upon a time we were easier. That maybe, just maybe, people like me, tired and alone on dark roads, used to just step out of the cab when asked, and were never seen again. So, if you're ever driving one of those long, lonely stretches of road, deep in the night, and you see something you can't explain, maybe just keep driving. Maybe being smarter now means knowing when not to stop. Knowing when to ignore that little voice telling you to help, because what's asking for help might not be what it seems. Stay safe out there, and for God's sake, stay on the well-lit roads.